Hi, I am Michael Kourosh and welcome to Design Santa Barbara. This week we are in Santa Barbara Design Center and I'm excited to share with you an entire episode dedicated to one of my favorite topics, art. Our first profiles, we will be exploring the life of iconic Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. Magdalena Carmen Frida Kahlo A. Calderon was born in the outskirts of Mexico City on July 6, 1907. Her father was a German and her mother was Mexican. The third of four girls, Frida described her childhood as sad and void of love. When Kahlo was 6 years old, she contracted polio, which made her right leg shorter and thinner than the left. The illness forced her to be isolated from her peers for months, and she was bullied. While the experience made her introverted, it also made her her father's favorite due to their shared experience of living with disability, as he suffered from epilepsy. He taught her about literature, nature, and philosophy, and encouraged her to play sports to regain her strength, despite the fact that most physical exercise was seen as unsuitable for girls. Working as a commercial photographer, he also taught her how to retouch, develop, and color photographs. In 1922, Kahlo was accepted to the elite National Preparatory School. The institute had only recently begun admitting women, with only 35 girls out of 2,000 students. Kahlo focused on natural sciences with aim of becoming a doctor. She performed well academically, was a voracious reader, and became deeply immersed and seriously committed to Mexican culture, political activism, and issues of social justice. The school promoted indigenismo, a new sense of Mexican identity that took pride in the country's indigenous heritage and sought to rid itself of the colonial mindset of Europe as superior to Mexico. Kahlo enjoyed art from an early age, receiving drawing instructions from her father's friend, printmaker Fernando Fernandez, and filling notebooks with sketches. In 1925, she began to work alongside school to help her family. After briefly working as a stenographer, she became a paid graving apprentice for Fernandez. He was impressed by her talent, although she did not consider art as a career at this time. On September 17, 1925, Kahlo and her boyfriend were on their way home from school when the wooden bus they were riding collided with a streetcar. Several people were killed and Kahlo suffered near-fatal injuries. An iron handrail impaled her through her pelvis, fracturing the bone. She also fractured several ribs, her legs, and her collarbone. She spent a month in the hospital and 2 months recovering at home, before being able to return to work. Health issues plagued her for the rest of her life as a result. During her recovery, she started to consider a career as a medical illustrator, which would combine her interests in science and art, and began to paint. She had a specially made easel that enabled her to paint in bed, and a mirror was placed above it so she could see herself. Painting became a way for Kahlo to explore questions of identity and existence, and she later stated that the accident and the isolating recovery period made her desire to begin again painting things just as I saw them with my own eyes and nothing more. Kahlo's bed rest was over by late 1927, and she began socializing with her old school friends who were now at university and involved in student politics. She joined the Mexican Communist Party and was introduced to a circle of political activists and artists, including the artist Diego Rivera, one of Mexico's most successful artists and a notable figure. Shortly after their introduction in 1928, Kahlo asked him to judge whether her paintings showed enough talent for her to pursue a career as an artist. Rivera recalled being impressed by her works, stating that they showed an unusual energy of expression, precise delineation of character, and true severity. They had a fundamental plastic honesty and an artistic personality of their own. It was obvious to me that this girl was an authentic artist. Kahlo soon began a relationship with Rivera, despite his being 42 years old, having had 2 common-law wives, and being a self-confessed womanizer. Kahlo and Rivera were married in a civil ceremony on August 21st, 1929. Soon after the marriage, in late 1929, Kahlo and Rivera moved to the rural state of Morelos, where he was commissioned to paint murals for the American ambassador. During the Mexican Civil War, Morelos had seen some of the heaviest fighting, and living through this sharpened Kahlo's sense of a Mexican identity and history. She changed her artistic style, beginning to draw inspiration increasingly from Mexican folk art. She also began to wear traditional Mexican clothing, which appealed to Rivera and helped her hide her damaged body. In 1931, Kahlo and Rivera moved to San Francisco, where American art lovers lavished them with praise and commissions. During this time, both engaged in extramarital affairs. This was a productive period for Kahlo, who further developed the folk art style she had adopted in Morelos. In addition to painting portraits of several new acquaintances, she made Frida and Diego Rivera, a double portrait based on their wedding photograph. Although she still publicly presented herself as simply Rivera's spouse rather than as an artist, she participated for the first time in an exhibition, when Frida and Diego Rivera was included in the 6th annual exhibition of the San Francisco Society of Women Artists in the Palace of the Legion of Honor. After completing his work in San Francisco, Rivera and Kahlo moved to New York for a retrospective of Rivera's work at the newly opened Museum of Modern Art. Kahlo enjoyed New York, but found Americans boring. After New York, the couple moved to Detroit, where Rivera was commissioned to create a mural for the Ford Motor Company. Kahlo's experience in Detroit was not a happy one. She disliked the area's anti-Semitism and clashed with Henry and Edsel Ford. By this time, Kahlo had become bolder in her interactions with the press, impressing journalists with her fluency in English and stating on her arrival to the city that she was the greater artist of the two of them. This time was also complicated by a miscarriage and the death of Kahlo's mother. She experimented with different techniques, such as etching and frescoes, and her paintings began to show a stronger narrative style. She also began placing emphasis on the themes of terror, suffering, wounds, and pain. Kahlo and Rivera returned to New York in March 1933, as he had been commissioned to paint a mural for the Rockefeller Center. During this time, she only worked on one painting. My dress hangs there. In May, Rivera was fired from the Rockefeller Center project amid an international scandal, as he had included Vladimir Lenin in the mural and refused to change it. He was instead hired to paint a mural for the New Workers' School. Although Rivera wished to continue their stay in the United States, Kahlo was homesick, and they returned to Mexico soon after the mural's unveiling in December 1933. Back in Mexico City, Kahlo and Rivera moved into a new house in the wealthy neighborhood of San Angel. It consisted of two sections joined together by a bridge. Kahlo's was painted blue and Rivera's pink and white. The Bohemian residence became an important meeting place for artists and political activists from Mexico and abroad. From 1934 to 1935, Kahlo experienced considerable health issues and only produced 2 works of art. She was emotionally broken when her husband engaged in an affair with her sister, resulting in 2 children. Fed up, she moved out for a year before reconciling with both. Unable to have a child herself, she eventually became a loving aunt to both children. Continuing to explore relationships outside their marriage, Kahlo had an affair with the ousted Soviet leader Leon Trotsky when he sought refuge in Mexico after being ousted by Stalin. During this time, Kahlo's work began to flourish again. In 1938, she commented, "I have produced more work than in the previous 8 years I have been married." She also made her first significant sale in the summer of 1938, when film star and art collector Edward G. Robinson purchased 4 paintings at $200 each. After a tumultuous decade of marriage, Kahlo and Rivera agreed to divorce in 1939 but remained close. Following her separation from Rivera, Kahlo moved back to La Casa Azul and began another productive period as an artist, inspired by her experiences abroad and determined to earn her own living. She painted several of her most famous pieces during this period, such as The Two Fridas, Self-Portrait with Cropped Hair, The Wounded Table, and Self-Portrait with Thorn Necklace and Hummingbird. During her San Francisco exhibition, Kahlo and Rivera reconciled and both feeling more independent, decided to remarry in 1940. In 1943, Kahlo accepted a teaching position where she encouraged her students to treat her in an informal and non-hierarchical way, and taught them to appreciate Mexican popular culture and folk art and to drive their subjects from the street. When her health problems made it difficult for her to commute to the school in Mexico City, she began to hold her lessons at La Casa Azul. In her last days, Kahlo was mostly bedridden. She seemed to anticipate her death, as she spoke about it to visitors and drew skeletons and angels in her diary. The last drawing was a black angel, which biographer Hayden Herrera interprets as the angel of death. Frida Kahlo died on July 13, 1954. Rivera, who stated that her death was the most tragic day of my life, died 3 years later in 1957. Kahlo's ashes are displayed in a pre-Columbian urn at La Casa Azul, which opened as a museum in 1958. The Tate Modern considers Kahlo one of the most significant artists of the 20th century. In 1990, she became the first Latin American artist to break the $1 million threshold when Diego and I was auctioned by Sotheby's for $1.4 million. In 2016, Two Lovers in a Forest sold for $8 million. Stay tuned. There is more Design Santa Barbara after the break. Today on Design FYI, we're going to talk about what not to buy when you're going shopping for rugs. Most big outlets or national chains, they sell nowadays hand-tufted rugs. This sounds like it's hand knotted, it's done by hand, but actually they are not. It's called hand-tufted and is actually a gun that rolls the wool around the warp, and they are not good rugs at all. So this is a sample we're having here for you to see. Anything that has a backing like this, flip your rugs over at home, see if it has a backing, is absolutely not good. So what it does is it hides what they did below this thing, which is a latex glue, which actually is toxin. And if you have got any rugs over the net, I hate to say it, over the net, because it's easy to sell and they're inexpensive, you buy these things over the internet. So when it comes to your house, they smell. Have you noticed that? They smell more like a gasoline or more like a diesel because they don't let the latex cure. And the latex that glues this wool to this backing smells a lot. On top of that, they shed quite a lot. The wool is cheap because they need to be inexpensive, and they shed. I would not recommend you to get anything, again, that has a backing and is glued, because it comes apart very easily. It is temporary. It is not a green product because they wear very quickly, end up in the fill, and just basically as a landfill junk we are adding to our planet. The things I would recommend you to get, unlike these things that have backing, is the rugs that they have nuts to them. So as what to buy, I highly recommend you to get some rugs that they are hand knotted. And how you can see, flip it to the back, and you can see the knots are done individually, and each one is slightly different than the next one because they're done by hand, and the intensity of the wool and the pull they have, the weaver, makes them look different. Also, the sides are done by hand. That you can see very easily. If you want to buy a real rug, please come to Santa Barbara Design Center and I can gladly help you. Thank you for joining us on Design FYI, Santa Barbara Design Center, Fort and Olive.
Welcome to Rugs & More. We provide the West Coast with the most comprehensive collection of new, oriental, and antique rugs. Rugs are solid art investments and often become cherished family treasures. Our limitless inventory will warm up your home. Exotic or traditional, tribal or modern, our rugs weave stories through intricate patterns, compelling colors, and touchable materials. #1 in Santa Barbara for over 20 years. Visit us today at Rugs & More, 410 Olive Street in Santa Barbara.
Today on Design Santa Barbara, we have my dear friend, Frank Goss again. I appreciate it for being on our show. And we have a beautiful painting. And would you kindly please explain to our viewers what it is about?
Absolutely, but I should remind, and you know, that we have been friends for more than 20 years. So,
well, yes.
Which is about 3/4 of your life, I think.
Very kind. Yes, we have been friends over 20 years.
Today, we have brought this painting done in Mexico in 1941. The greatest illustrator, painter in American history is Norman Rockwell. And he did barbershop scenes and coffee shop scenes and scenes in all kinds of daily life that got used on magazine covers and that sort of thing. In Mexico, the equivalent artist is Jesus Hilguera, said there, Jesus Hilguera. And you can see this is by Hilguera. And there are very, very few that I know of, only 2 paintings outside of the collection that is in the Samoya Museum in Mexico City. And how Hilguera got started is he did posters and cigarette package covers for the Cayus family, who had all of the posters and all of the cigarettes that were manufactured in Mexico were done by his company. And he contracted with Hilguera, because he was such a good illustrator, to do those illustrations. And then part of the deal was that he got to keep the artwork, the original artwork, and it all went into a warehouse. Somehow this got loose of that deal, and it ended up in the United States in the 70s, brought by a film family, whose name I won't use, but a well-known film family. And when the final members of the family passed away, this went up to auction. And it has come to us, and you would know a lot about this painting just by your history. We all know Richie Valens' great song, La Bamba.
La Bamba.
This painting is titled La Bamba, and it turns out there's a La Bamba before Richie Valens. If you are Oaxacan or a Veracruzana, at a wedding you dance the dance called La Bamba, and these people are dancing this dance. And this is the dress that is prescribed in all of the literature about that dance, the apron, the little scarf, this little knotted element.
Tell me what that little knot.
Right, and at some point in the ceremony, that gets untied and put on the ground in a certain design, and they dance in and out of the circles, and that's part of the ancient dance. And his outfit is, although nowhere near as interesting, is the official outfit for a fellow getting married in Veracruz. Hilguera continued to do this work until his passing, and the Cayos family kept them all in a warehouse. And eventually, the tobacco company and the company that did calendars were purchased by Carlos Slim, who you know of as having a very interesting history, and is one of the world's richest men. When Carlos Slim did the deal, he intended to buy the cigarette company and the calendar company, which were both very successful, from the Cayos family. And the story is told that he went to see where the company was and the little parts of the company that were on a campus in northern Mexico. And while he was there, a fellow came in and said, "Hey boss, what do you want us to do with all the paintings?" And Carlos Slim said, "What paintings?" And lo and behold, he had purchased, in addition to the elements of the deal, he had purchased these paintings. And he gave them to his daughter, Samoya, and today they are in the Samoya Museum in Mexico City.
Frank, I thank you very much. This was a wealth of knowledge as you are, and wonderful piece. Thank you. Welcome back. We are sitting today with acclaimed Santa Barbara artist Ralph Waterhouse. We are very fortunate having you on our show.
Thank you, I appreciate being
I
here.
understand your gallery just celebrated a milestone. Can you tell us about that?
It did. 32 years in business as an art gallery in Santa Barbara. We've been 25 years in our current location in La Arcada. We've got wonderful landlords in the Peterson family, so we're very proud to be there. In fact, we are the longest tenant in the interior of La Arcada. We've been there 25 years now, so we're very proud of that.
Actually, I remember when the day you opened, actually. I was across the street from you for a while.
You were indeed?
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I understand you were a graphic artist. What led you to become a painter?
I started out as a graphic designer, worked in print first in a print company, then moved into advertising, worked on ads for many different products, but working in the north of England, it was mainly industrial products I worked on. I'd always had an interest in painting, so I started doing it as a hobby. And at that time I was painting wildlife, little bunnies and small nesting birds and, songbirds basically. I'd been painting, so I thought I'm going to try and make a career of this. And so I did a group of paintings, took them to a gallery. About a week later they called me and they said, we've sold 5 of those 6 paintings you brought. I said, whoa, so can you do some more? So I did, and that kind of progressed from there. And so I continued doing that for many, many years. And became quite well known in England. I did calendars for the Royal Society of Protection of Birds. I did work for the World Wildlife Fund. So I continued to do that for several years, and then eventually I came to Southern California just for a visit. I was painting for a gallery in Scottsdale, and at that time I met my wife Diane. She didn't want to live in England, so I thought I could give this a try. And I'd already been in the States. I emigrated to the States in 1974, so I'd already got green card and all that sort of status. So I didn't have a problem with that. And so there we are. So I'd had a little studio in England, and so I thought I want to do my own thing again. So we opened a gallery. We opened a gallery and went on from there. And then after a few years of doing what I did, I was getting a little tired. I was getting backache doing the detailed birds, and I started going outdoors and painting. So, I discovered the California landscape, how beautiful the landscape was, how wonderful the light was, very Mediterranean. Of course, we're facing south, so you get that wonderful shadows, the early morning shadows, the late afternoon, the sunlight. It's just beautiful. So I was just drawn to painting the landscape, and I've kind of done that now for the last, I can't remember how many years, but quite a while.
So tell us about the paintings you brought us today.
Okay, well, this one behind us, actually this kind of happened by accident. We were going up to San Luis Obispo on the train, and something I haven't done very often. And we got halfway, we got beyond Hollister Ranch, we were going up the coast past Vandenberg, and I'm looking out of the window and I see this beautiful outcropping of rock. And fortunately, I had my camera, I had my telephoto lens, so I took, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 shots of that whole thing. And I just got one very small image of the whole thing, but I'd taken lots of close-up shots. So basically, I did that from a journey, the studies I gathered from a journey on the train from here up to San Luis Obispo. So, and I just recently recreated that from all the reference I had. So the light was a little gray at the time, so I took a little liberty and enhanced it and brought out the colors a lot more. And it was in the springtime, as you can see. It's a little bit green, but late spring, so it wasn't that vibrant color, but there were a few wildflowers, which always helps and adds a little to the, and of course the waves were just wonderful. I mean, we get some wonderful waves up the coast, and that was just, it gave it a lot of atmosphere, so I was very pleased with it.
That's a stunning piece. What I like about your paintings is they're always lively, and they put you in the scene, actually. You feel like you're in it, and it's very, very light and airy. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So maybe you tell us about the next one.
This particular painting, it's a scene right across from our house. We're very fortunate. We live right alongside the Douglas Preserve in Santa Barbara, and it's an open area of land. This was a foggy day. The fog was just lifting, and so I was out there, and I actually did a quick study of this, a small study. I took my easel out, I had my paints at home, and I did a little small study, just about 6x8 study, quick study. I took some photographs, and from that I developed this larger piece. And I love painting eucalyptus trees. It's when I first moved to California, I was very captivated by them, very sculptural. So they're always a joy, and of course the trees on the left there are eucalyptus. And so I combine the ocean, the meadow, and the eucalyptus trees. It's the perfect mix to me of a subject to paint.
Beautiful. All right, Ralph. So now this is the third painting you brought. Can you tell us where that is?
This is the very tip of the cliff at the far end of Butterfly Beach. In other words, the most eastern point. I did this actually from a photograph, directly from a photograph. I went out one morning about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was driving around. It was dense fog, and I think, oh my goodness, you know, I'm not going to find anything interesting. But it was so dense, I couldn't even see anything interesting. So I got out of my car and I walked down the beach at Butterfly Beach there, and I'm walking toward the cliff, and all of a sudden, the sun bursts through, and literally it lit up the end of the cliff. And I thought, oh my God, took my camera out, click, took the photograph again, enlarged it, you know, shrunk back, telephoto, the whole thing, and then it vanished. And I've never seen it do that again. It was just one of those magical moments. It literally illuminated the end of the cliff, and it was a magical moment. And I couldn't have ever captured it with my paintbrush and easel out there because it was gone so quickly. So the magic of the camera transformed into a painting.
I thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for beautiful paintings. Looking forward to have you again.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you.